Aloha friends, it's Robert Stehlik with Blue Planet Surf. Welcome to another episode of our stand-up paddle racing training group. Today's topic is paddle handling and paddle grip technique.
This is basic. It can be basic stuff all the way up to little nuances that might help your paddle stroke. So the basic thing when we do lessons is, in order to avoid the student having their paddle too far down or too far up. So we start from here, so the elbow's at 90 degrees, and this is where you start with your hand placement on the paddle. So that gets you roughly where you want to be in terms of your bottom hand. So the bottom hand, if you go too far down, it's you get more leverage, but it's a little awkward. If you go too far up, then it's hard to pull the paddle because there's too much of a lever at the end. So this is a good starting point, but then you need to find out where is comfortable for you and efficient to place your bottom hand. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is the grip. So the grip's not super hard. It's kind of loose, kind of like a golf swing type of grip where you want it firm but not gripping super hard. So that's important. And then when you do that, if you're gripping super hard, you notice that your hand will be at a right angle. But if you kind of loosen your grip, you can let that paddle go out like this a little bit with your pinky not so wrapped around the paddle. So that way you can actually get your paddle a little more forward, like that. And then when you start to pull, then maybe you can grip it a little more. So that's another little thing. On the top hand, like these paddles, these Blue Planet handles, they have little finger grips here, so you can wrap your hand around here. But as far as the angle of the top hand, so that's another thing. I think it depends on the person. But in canoe paddling, sometimes we don't make the paddle grip it straight like this. Sometimes we angle our hands a little bit like this. It's a little more natural rather than this. And then the placement of your this part of the arm, you want it, I think, for me at least, I drop my elbow a little bit down so that you can pull harder this way, because the first movement is down, right? So if your hand's like this, a high elbow, it's harder to push the paddle down that way. But if your elbow's a little lower, you can actually use your lats and this part of the arm more to pull the paddle down when you're first engaging and trying to get that clean pull, right? So the elbow's a little bit down. So there's we used to teach long time ago, or some people too still do this, the push with the top hand to paddle, but I don't subscribe to that too much anymore. I mean, there might be a little bit of push like that, but more it's you rotate and it's a drive down, and then it's this A-frame here acts kind of as a whole unit and you pull. So what I'm getting at is if there's a push, then you're going to end up with a high elbow here like that, and then it might be hard to apply downward pressure. So that's another reason why the elbow is a little lower. That's just my theory. Other people might be different, and everyone's different. So I don't do this too much of this, and I kind of go down more and then just start to rotate back from there after I get the clean pull. So those are the real basics of it. And then the rest is really personal preference, where you want to hold the bottom hand, how hard you grip it. But those are the basic recommendations for hand grip and placement and that kind of thing. So it also depends on your paddle. I mean, if you have a big paddle, like Brad has a big paddle here, it's a big blade, so you might do something a little different. You might, because the blade's so big, to pull it through the water, you might have to, or lock it in and pull, you might have to get your hand a little lower on that. I'm not sure. So it depends on your paddle too. If you have a real small blade, and you're doing downwind, you might end up moving your hand up a little bit so you can do higher RPMs and save your energy. So those are other considerations.
Okay, my microphone wasn't working properly, so I'm just going to do a little voiceover. And I just wanted to reiterate the point that Jeff was making, to keep a loose grip on your paddle with your lower hand. And also, I like to hold the paddle not with that underneath the first joint of the finger, but after the second joint of the finger. Just having the hand in a more open position, I find that leads to less forearm cramping and stuff like that, especially in really long distance racing like the Molokai race and so on. And then also the top hand, when your hand's at the top, I always try to relax my fingers and not grip it tightly. When your hand is at the bottom, you always have to hold the paddle. And so at the top, I try to relax my fingers and not use the fingers at all as much as possible, and really just apply pressure with the palm of my hand. And then switching the paddle, I try to pass it from one side directly into the other side. So what I sometimes see beginners do is hold the paddle at two different heights, like basically pass it and then hold it above or below the other side. So then that way you have kind of an asymmetrical stroke because you're not holding it at the same height. So ideally, you want to pass the paddle from one hand directly into the other hand, so your grip height on both sides is the same. You can use your thumb to slide up the shaft and then grab the handle like that, or just grab it directly. Another thing is when you're switching sides with the paddle, you don't want to do like an L-shaped switch, so because that takes a little bit longer. So when you're switching, ideally you want to go diagonally across to the other side, so that way you can start your next stroke right away, and you don't have as much of a lag between the two sides and don't slow down as much. Another thing is when you're paddling into a strong headwind, sometimes the feathering can kind of cause the paddle to push against you when you're switching sides. So sometimes I actually try to kind of twist my wrist so I have a kind of a reverse feather, and I find that makes it easier to kind of slide the paddle through the wind diagonally by kind of reversing the feather a little bit. But that's something you can try if you want going into a strong headwind. That technique works for me. And here's Jeff with some more pointers.
So the background here, what you see is the actual M2O finish, and then today it's windy, and every time we come in from the M2O, it's always usually windy. So I still do the choke thing, the Connor Baxter choke thing. So when it's windy and we're going into the wind, I'll actually, instead of doing this, I'll shift both hands down like this, and then I'll be in a really crouch low stance, and I'll paddle like this. So then your body's lower and there's less presentation to the wind, so it's a little more aerodynamic. But yeah, I definitely do this. So this is something different than what we've been talking about. So you hold the paddle at the top here, you don't hold here, you hold here, and then you slide this hand down, and it's a little more aerodynamic in terms of going into the wind, and it's also easier to move your paddle like this than if you're going into the wind like this. So that's another way to just paddle, and another type of grip. And I also sometimes do that, like at the end of a race, if we're sprinting, then I'll from here I'll go down to there, and it's just, you can turn it over higher. So that's just another variation on it. Okay, so that's what we have to say about paddle grip and technique in terms of hand placement, etc. But thanks for watching, everyone.
Yeah.
And tuning in.
Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the Blue Planet Surf YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Aloha.